conversation here on my Instagram. We've got some amazing special guests joining us today to discuss their experiences of being non-binary and what it means to them. So I'm so glad that we're going to have all of you coming on board to join that conversation. Before we get started, I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm conducting this live today on stolen land. It's the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. Sovereignty was never ceded, and I'd like to extend my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, past, present and emerging, and any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people watching this live right now. Good afternoon or morning, I don't know what time it is there. It is evening. It is 5 p.m, okay? And we are conducting this time zone. There is time zones happening. We have people tuning in from all over the globe. So I hope you've all got a little beverage. I've got my gin and tonic here in an Absolute glass. Absolute doesn't make gins as far as I know, but I'm just having it in a coupe anyway. For anyone watching, if you don't know me or you just follow me because I was on Drag Race, my name's etcetera or Ollie. I use they them pronouns out of drag, and she her pronouns in drag. And we have some real amazing people joining us on this live today. We have Ilona Verley from Canada's Drag Race. We have Inti from Drag Race España. And we have my amazing friend Mickey here from Sydney, who is a fantastic advocate for non-binary people here. And I've actually learned a lot about non-binary identity through following them on Instagram, and the conversations we've had have been very enlightening. They're one of my favorite people, so I'm so excited to bring them here as well. We are just going to be discussing some general things, having some general conversation around a couple of questions. But we are also, if you have any questions during the live, any specific questions, type them in to the little question box so that they pop up down here and I can look at them and I can ask them through there. Because if you don't do that, they'll get lost in the comment stream and I will never be able to find them. And that will be really unfortunate because we won't be able to answer your questions. Okay, I am going to invite our lovely people in to this live right now, and let's see. I'm just going to send the invites, and they'll all join in their own time. When they're ready. You know, I'm not one for rushing anyone to do anything. Oh, but speaking of ready, we have Miss Ilona Verley in the house.
Listen, I thought it was gonna be so late, but I made it on time, so we're out here. Hello.
Yeah, you're the first one here. You're so on time. How are you, my love?
I'm good. I was just doing some gigs in Dallas. I had 2 shows tonight, and we were wrapping up. I was like, bitch, I gotta go. I got a lot to do. So we were like. In America, rules don't exist.
How were the shows?
It was so fun. I love Dallas so much. The nightlife scene here is so fierce. It's been a great time.
Oh, that's so good. It's so nice to see you out performing again and doing your thing. I know after your season, you know, you had a bit of a COVID moment, so it's important, I guess, to experience the gig lifestyle.
Girl, literally, I'm like, I am a Drag Race girl. Like, it didn't feel real, but like now that I'm doing shows again, I'm like, okay, yes, like we love.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, well, I'm so glad that you're actually having a good time. We've known each other for a while, which is super fun that we're both on the Drag Race journey now together.
Like, I tell everyone, like, when I was in Australia, that's when I was auditioning for Canada's Drag Race. Like, you were there from, like, ground zero. When I left to go back to Canada, you were in LA. Like, you were such a big part of my Drag Race journey. And, like, seeing you on Drag Race now, it's just been so crazy. Because I remember when you were in LA, we were talking about one day if Australia Drag Race ever happens.
I know. And look where we are now. Well, good for us. But if people are watching that don't necessarily know who you are or, you know, what you do, give a brief rundown of who you are, what your pronouns are, and just a bit about yourself.
Yes, hello everybody. Hello all of etcetera's followers. My name is Ilona Verley. I was on Canada's Drag Race. Obviously, we hates it because Canada's stolen land, so Indigenous rights, you better work. Anyways, I was on a TV show, and I'm an Indigenous rights activist. I am a trans drag performer. Even though I identify as trans, I still identify as non-binary because throughout my transition, I know that I still am not inherently female or male, and although I might be changing my outwards appearance, I am still going to be identifying as non-binary. So that's a little bit about me. I am originally from Vancouver, Canada. I lived in LA for a bit, and I'm currently in Houston, Texas.
You've done it all, and I'm so glad to have you here on the live today. I think we've got both of the others about to join in. They're about to come in to the live. Hi, beauties! Hello! Hi. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm so excited to have both of you. I mean, everyone here, I think the thing we do share in common is we're very vocal about our beliefs, our political, ideologies and understandings of the world. And so I'm so grateful to have all of these beautiful voices on a live together today for International Non-Binary People's Day. Ilona just finished introducing herself and what she does. So, Mickey, if you want to just give a brief rundown about who you are, your pronouns, what you do, where you're speaking from today, that would be amazing.
Hey, I'm Mickey, and I'm streaming from the Gadigal land of the Eora Nation. And yeah, it's been a weird day, so I'm having a cheeky drink. But yeah, what am I? In the capitalist sense, I guess I do social media work. I was just working with the ABC for ABC Queer, and now I'm doing freelance work. But in the sense of like a meat sack on a rock flying through space type beat, I am an artist and community facilitator, and yeah, just trying to vibe out here, even when it's hard, even on a bad brain day like today.
Exactly, and you have such excellent vibes. I'm always honored and pleased to be in the same space as you. So thank you for joining today. And we have one of my favorites from the recent international seasons. Blown away by your talent and everything you do. Hi, Inti. Thank you so much for joining. We've lost Mickey, but they will come back, I hope. But thank you for coming along, Inti. Would you mind introducing yourself and just letting people know a bit about you and it's a rundown?
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much. This congratulations, etc., because this is very important. And yeah, my name is Inti. I've been in Drag Race Spain, and I'm a multidisciplinary artist. And I identify as a trans non-binary.
Thank you so much, and no, thank you so much for coming along today. It's such a pleasure, and yeah, I'm in awe of your work and what you do. It's everyone that is on the live today, I really love what you all do outside of what you speak. Okay, great, we've got Mickey back. Okay, cool. So now we've got a general vibe of everyone. We're just gonna have a big old chat because I mean, all of us as non-binary people identifying somewhere under the trans umbrella, we all have individual experiences of gender, and I think that's the most important thing to kind of stress on a day like today. We all have our own personal experiences. We can't speak for each other, and no trans person can really speak for any other trans person's experience. So I've got 3 main questions. We're going to go through them. I'm just going to chuck them to each of you to get your answers on them, and just get your thoughts on what your experience has been like with each of these things. And we've got some questions that the audience are sending in. At the end, we might do a couple of them. I'll choose a couple, and anyone that wants to answer them can. But we're going to kick off. If you want to start, Ilona, what's your favorite thing about being non-binary?
Girl, okay, my favorite thing about being non-binary and like being able to come into myself was a reflection. Back in like elementary school as a kid, I used to have people come up to me all the time and be like, are you a boy or are you a girl? Like, blah, blah, blah. And that used to hurt me so badly. And reflecting on why that hurt me so badly was because I wasn't sure what I was, you know, at the time. Obviously, as a kid, we don't have a lot of knowledge on like who we are as people. You know, we're just lost trying to figure out anything. And so that always hurt me a lot growing up because I was like, I'm a boy, but I never felt right as a boy. I just felt like that's what I had to defend myself as. And growing up and growing into myself, I realized I can look at all those people in the face and want to ask me if I'm a boy or girl and go, honey, I'm whatever you want me to be. I could be this, I could be that. I'm just myself, you know? Like, I am a boy sometimes, I'm a girl sometimes. And gender is such, like, a funny thing now to, like, look back on that and why that ever offended me because I look at my gender and I just laugh. I wake up every morning, I know who I am. I look in the mirror, I'm happy. Whether I'm female presenting or male presenting, I'm like, I'm good. I personally am starting my transition. When I get home from this tour, I am starting estrogen and I'm going to take some steps to be physically presenting in my day-to-day life. However, like I mentioned at the beginning of the live, I do still identify as non-binary because I don't necessarily identify as just masculine or just feminine. And that's part of my two-spiritedness is just being myself and connecting with all my different energies and aspects. And, you know, but that's probably my favorite thing about being non-binary is being able to joke around a little bit and be like, I'm both. I'm a little bit of this, I'm a little bit of that. The whole world.
Exactly. Such a good explanation. And like, yeah, it's that divine in between. It's being able to, I saw an article actually about Loki from the Marvel movies being like gender fluid and how Loki in a lot of Norse mythology is gender fluid and how, you know, Loki's a trickster. And I was like, I feel that. I feel like all non-binary people are just like tricksters.
That's the thing, like in cultures, like we've always believed in tricksters and that whole like shifting. So I definitely really connect with that, and you know, we stand.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that with us. And Inti, what about you? What do you love about being non-binary trans?
What I love is like the liberty of express your gender, which doesn't mean that you have to like focus on the femininity or the masculinity. You are who you are, and that's it.
Yeah, totally. It's just that freedom to just wake up in the morning and go, yep, this is me. And not having to put yourself in the box or struggle with that structure that so many people feel like they have to fight their entire lives. Totally feel that. And Mickey, what about you? What's your favorite thing? What gives you joy about the non-binary experience?
I think, first of all, the fact that it just honors that we are humans, that we're having this experience in this place in bodies, and that's it. Like I really, the thing that really kind of bothers me about the gender binary is that there's so much. I mean, no one likes to be pigeonholed in any way ever, and I just feel like this strong kind of association with your body is this, you're like this, you don't know anything about me. Like I am in a flesh suit and I am experiencing my day-to-day and I'm trying to survive and I'm trying to bring joy to others and I'm trying to connect with others. I am so much more than my body. And yeah, I think I like that aspect of identifying outside of the binary, and also that it doesn't matter who I'm with, they're always going to be gay, we're always going to be in a gay relationship.
Yeah. Totally. You're so right. It's about, I mean, this life is, there's so many joys, there's so many sadnesses, there's so many traumas, so many things that hang on our mental and physical forms. And I think a great joy that I've gotten out of being non-binary is learning how to distance, you know, the things that exist in my head from the things that exist in the world, and just and be more in the moment, kind of vibe the energy of others, vibe my own energy. And this is something I tweeted the other day. The final step to self-actualization is minding your own fucking business. Just
Yeah.
like going about your day-to-day life, not worrying what that person's doing and whether or not that makes you unhappy. Just like vibing with the people that make you happy, your own energy, and trying to transcend those tiny little things that people get caught up on and fighting for overall happiness, love, and peace. So you're also right. I love your viewpoints. Someone in the comments said this live feels like a warm hug, and like
I
I'm so
love
glad that we're creating a safe space and a happy space for non-binary people, because like again, if I wish that I'd had these kind of conversations when I was growing up, because like they're so vital for young people, I think, today.
absolutely.
Okay, next question, and this is a bit more personal, and this is one that I always ask myself because it's a good way to kind of evaluate where I am now in my life. Is what is one thing you wish you always had known or been aware of about being non-binary? So when you started your journey, what's one thing that you thought, I wish that I'd known this at the start because it would have made everything much easier? Mickey, where do you sit with that? What's one thing that like you wish you'd always known?
So I guess I mean, I'm pretty pissed about Mark Latham like trying to get like trans education out of schools, because if we had had that when growing up, I mean, puberty is already so hard, you know, to experience for any little human to go through. But if I had that kind of information, it would have been so much more validating, because like growing up as like an AFAB fat queer person who developed breast tissue really early on, and like just was so confused in my body, and I tried so hard to dress myself in masculine ways, but then would get really bullied for it, or would not get any kind of external validation, which I mean, as a young person, sometimes you thrive on before you realize that journey of self-love. So yeah, just like that education would have been great, and that's why I think it's so important for us to include things like trans health and education in schooling, and taxes if you're going to make us do our taxes. But that's another story. I just, yeah, that would have been so helpful as a young person. And once I did kind of come into a queer scene, I realized that, okay, like there's things beyond the gender binary, and things that we've been taught beyond the gender binary. And wow, that's me. That I feel good hearing that and knowing that there's people who feel like me, and knowing that that's valid and okay. Like, wow, cool. Yeah, just that.
Yeah, very that. You're just
Very
being
that.
able to know just a lot of things. I wish I'd known a lot of things. What about you, Inti? And I don't mean to make this... Sorry.
Colonial gender binary and gender roles is... it's not it. And yeah, anyway, sorry.
No. Don't apologize. You're speaking the truth here, and we all agree. We're all feeling it. Inti, what about you? I don't mean this to be like a drag race moment. This is very like, if you could say one thing to little so and so, what would it be? I don't mean to make it that. I don't mean to trigger us. But what would you say to your younger self if you had the opportunity to be like, I wish you could have known this?
I would say like everything your society in that moment have told you, they have the wrong information, and you don't have to blame them, but also you don't have to listen to them. There is like a lot of people like you. You're not alone, and what you are, what you're feeling, what you want to express. It's okay. You don't have to force it. You don't have to do anything. Just be yourself. Period.
Yes, that is so true. Yeah. There are people like you. I think that's such an important thing to tell trans and gender diverse youth is that you will find those people. Even if they're not around you right now, if you go looking for them, you will find them. You'll find the people that you need to be around. So thank you for speaking to that. And Ilona, what would you have said to little Ilona?
Girl, I would have said just hang in there, girl. The representation's coming. You know, the biggest thing for me when I got on Drag Race was understanding that it's not just my dream and it's not just my moment, that I got to make it bigger than myself and to be the I wish that I had growing up. And I've said this a million times in various interviews. Like, when I was growing up, I had no one to look up to on TV. I didn't even know what being non binary was. I knew that there was this hole inside of me. And even when I came out as gay, I was like, something's missing still. And I didn't know what it was, you know? And it wasn't until I started doing nightlife and I met my drag aunt, Jaylene Time, who was a two-spirit trans woman, that I learned about being two-spirit, being non-binary. And I was like, this is that thing that's missing, you know, for me. That's that thing inside of me that I never connected with as a gay cis person. I was never that, you know? And learning this terminology to describe the person that I was and that I'd always known I was such an important part of me being able to go on this platform of Drag Race and be like, this is what I am, this is who I am. And I talked about it nonstop because I was like, if I can connect with one person watching the show and give them the representation that would have changed my life growing up, that's what matters to me. I don't care how far I make it. If I get to talk about being two-spirit, non-binary, trans, like, that's the moment for me. And to be completely honest, when I went on the show, they asked me not to talk about being transgender, and I was fucking appalled, girl. I was out of my goddamn mind. And they were like, okay, like, the most that we're comfortable with you talking with is like your two-spirit identity and like being non-binary. And I was like, okay, so I made sure I did not stop talking about those things. And as soon as I got off that goddamn show, every interview I did, I was like, I'm trans non-binary. I actually identify as trans non-binary. And I would not shut my mouth. And I'm like, you know what, sue me. You're not going to sue the native trans girl. That's going to look real bad on y'all. I'm like, I'm going to start so much shit. We out here. Anyways, I don't know about that. But, you know, like, for me, it was the most important thing was just being the representation, being the person on TV I wish I had growing up, you know, because I feel like all of us, the generation we came from, there was hardly any queer people on TV, let alone gender diverse people, let alone non-binary or trans people. And I'm so happy that thankfully in this day and age, there's people like all of us out there in media, on social media, on TV shows, showing people at home, like, it's not just a cis-binary world, and non-binary, queer, trans people can be just as successful as cis people.
Absolutely. You're so right. And I mean, like, people are so scared of the power and vulnerability that comes with sharing your experience with gender. They're so scared of delving into what they don't understand and the messiness of that. And we've all had experiences, I'm sure, in our lives where we've tried to talk to people about these truths that exist within us, and people back away as if it's something that frightens them, or they're not able to fully understand or comprehend it. They don't want to deal with it. And I think so much of the work that we all do is kind of, while we still have so much complexity within our identities, it's demystifying the core truth of being non-binary for people to understand, so that they can look at non-binary people and not see them as this unknown threat, but see them as their friends, as their siblings, as their co-workers. You know, because non-binary people exist everywhere. Trans people exist everywhere. And so many people don't, and always have. And people don't realize that. People are unaware of the fact that it's not a trend. It's not a modern thing. It's not like, you know, it's not just a popular thing right now. It is the truth of so many people throughout history for millennia in so many different cultures.
I think, like, we're just understanding now that, you know, like, we can talk about who we are. You know, for so long, like, after colonization, non-binary trans people, like, we felt like we had to comply, we had to hide our identities. And now people with social media and with these platforms are taking their voices back, and they're like, no, like, we're here, we've been here. And it's exactly that. And, you know, especially in indigenous cultures, like, gender variant people have existed for centuries. There was no, like, true gender in indigenous cultures before colonization, you know. And that's a big thing I always like to bring up is, like, this is not some new concept. It's exactly what you said. Like, we've been here. Like, we're still here. We're not going anywhere. Like, hello. Like, listen to us. We're finally talking. Open your ears.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's a perfect segue into the next question, which is something that I always feel like I have a million things that I want to say to the world. And I think we all do. But what is that one thing? If you could narrow it down to one, you can say more than one. I don't really care. There's no rules here. What is something that you want other people to know about being non-binary? Something that if you could implant something into people's brains, that they would instantly go accept and go, oh yeah, that's true, and believe it as such. What is that one thing? Inti, what about you? What would you say?
I will say that again, we have to unlearn the things that we learn. And for example, in my perspective, which I'm from Spain and come from South America, we have learned that everything is binary. It seeks God and devil, good and bad, woman and men, and it doesn't have to be like this. Also, yeah, like it's a whole fun. I don't know how to say like a spectrum. Sorry, a whole, so.
Yeah, perfect. Like that's such a good way of like explaining it, that it's not just in gender. Society in general has created binaries to process things they don't understand. They don't understand morality a lot of the time. So they're like, there's God and there's the devil. And anything in between, we don't want to talk about it. So, same with gender. I think it's really important to distinguish from the fact that like colonial and pre-colonial ideas of gender are completely different things, and that's the root cause of a lot of transphobia and a lot of, you know, of the boxes that we as non-binary people get placed in, is those colonial ideas of gender. So exactly what you're saying, Inti. What about you, Mickey? What's that one thing you wish you could just zap someone with and then they'd believe it for the rest of their lives?
I have like a few things, if that's okay. So I just want people to understand that when you look at nature and when you look at the universe and the world around you, you see the different processes that things go through naturally. And you see that everything has a cycle, everything is fluid, everything is constantly changing and moving and shifting. And why is things like what Inti was saying, there's always binaries with everything. Why would there be these concrete binaries when you look at the natural world around you, you see this constant fluidity and change? And for you to acknowledge that those ebbs and flows within yourself, that fluidity within yourself, is the most loving thing that you can do for yourself. It's a wonderful way to love yourself and the place that we're in, this little rock flying through space, you know? Secondly, this is just me speaking from my experience as someone who is AFAB, but I'm sure other people can also relate in different ways, just speaking from my own experience. I just don't understand why we gender body parts and bodies and decide, like, how do we decide what's feminine and what's masculine? I feel like when I'm in something that is like red and presents as femme, that I actually feel fucking masc a lot of the time. And you know, like, you wouldn't gender your elbows, so why are you gendering like the flesh on my chest, the tissue on my chest? Like, I don't really understand. But that being said, like, that external perspective and being perceived in that way does really like affect people, even if you are doing your darndest job at trying to love yourself and hold yourself and know that you are valid the way that you are in this moment, it's really hard. So I just urge people to think why we gender so many things in the way that we do, and to look at the world around them, like the natural world around them, and just consider like the constructs that we've created as humans in relation to the natural world.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes it's about that perspective and looking at things in perspective. So such a good take on it, and such a good analogy. Like, why are certain parts of our body gendered but others aren't? You know, it's like no one's looked at my elbow and said, well, that's a particularly masculine elbow. I mean, maybe I do have masculine elbows, but who's to judge? Don't judge my elbows. You don't even know me. No, so right. You're so right. Ilona, what's the one thing you wish you could just everyone would believe instantly?
You know, I just wish that people would understand that being non-binary is not like some fetishized concept of like something trendy. It's an actual identity that we live and we experience. And it's not a fad. It's not an in-between phase. It's an actual part of who we are, and it always has been. And just because someone is just coming into their words to express who they are doesn't mean that they didn't know who they were from the day they were born. Like, I, as a kid, knew that there was something wrong. Like, I was looking in the mirror being like, there was something off, you know? And I think now, especially with social media and media, and this is something I talk about a lot, is that being able to find ourselves quicker and find those words to express who we are faster is helping a lot of people be able to just live their lives like sooner, you know? Like, I grew up not knowing who the fuck I was because I didn't know what these feelings were, what these expressions were that I was experiencing, because there was nothing in media to relate to. And, you know, I would just say that, like, I wish people would just understand that this is always who we have been. It's not a new concept. It's not a new idea. It's not a trend. It's a real fucking thing. Get on our goddamn levels.
Absolutely. I agree with you so much. And I think I was actually, this is not good for probably my own mental health, but I was scrolling through the comments section on one of the posts of Demi Lovato coming out as non-binary the other day, and reading the comments, because I like to know what, you know, the general population of people think. It's something that I do to make myself feel bad. but I'm always interested to see what kind of like people are saying, and what they're like, what the zeitgeist kind of brings forward as like an argument of like, this is why non-binary isn't a thing. And something that a lot of people were saying was, you know, being non-binary, people do it for attention. And that's something a lot of people have said to me. Oh, you're just doing it for attention. I hid the fact from the people around me that I was non-binary for almost 2 years because I didn't want to share it with people. I was so insecure and so fearful of people knowing that about me that I hid it away from the world. I want to be left alone. I don't want random people on the street being like, you're non-binary, let me give you a confetti explosion. I want to give you attention right now. I just want to live my life. I want to live a life just like any other cis person. I don't want your attention. You're the one that's giving it to me. You're the one that's making this into a spotlight on my life kind of moment. You're the one that's treating me differently from how you treat other cis people. You're the one that's not treating me with the same respect. And so I find arguments like that, just like you're saying, Ilona, it's not a trend. It's not your perspective on that is the thing that is making it so. That's your perspective. And whether or not you have that belief of my identity, whether or not you think I'm not real or not valid, that changes nothing. We still exist, we always have, and we always will. And so anyone that's watching this, or anyone in the comments or watching this afterwards, if you are non-binary or you're questioning your identity or you're wondering where you sit on the gender spectrum, just remember whatever you believe is and will always be valid. And no matter what people say, they can't change that. They will never be able to change the core truth that you hold within you. So that's just something to remember.
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
the most heartbreaking part of what you just said is when that kind of perspective comes out of our own community, out of our own communities, our queer communities, our trans communities. And when people, like, especially when people get trans medicalists or just like, I don't know, like I just I don't even have anything more to say about it. I just think that is what are your thoughts on that when you see that within your community, like your own community? Like, how do you respond to that stuff?
You said it before. You were like, I shouldn't be reduced to my body, and it is sad sometimes when people within the community, including other gender diverse people, reduce non-binary people to their bodies, because it essentially goes against
policing other people, like other trans people's bodies. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know.
When I first was announced for Drag Race, the first tweet I made was like, I'm so thankful to have a platform. I am going to be holding myself accountable to use this platform to speak on Indigenous issues and trans issues. And I had a lot of post-op trans performers attack me because I was not post-op. And they're like, how can you talk on the trans experience when you're not post-op and blah, 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 blah. And your voice is not valid because you don't have tits on your body and blah, blah. I was like, girl, I have double D's and I grew them naturally. Don't come for me. But like, it really broke my fucking heart because I was like, I'm trying to use my voice to talk about my experience and help people in my community. And you're trying to gatekeep from using my voice and making it. I was like, what are you doing? What are you accomplishing by being a gatekeeper? And you know, like I've experienced it, and it's so silly. Like we go through so much already that separates us from society when our own community is pushing us apart. Like it's so redundant. Like we need to be there for each other. Like not even just as non-binary trans people, as queer people. Like we need to stick together. All the hating and all the fucking petty bullshit is so stupid. And like I have almost got banned from every goddamn social media platform because I will get in fights over the shit. I am so fucking vocal. I'm like, stop being a dumb bitch. Like, stop being, get it together. Like, we need to be a community. Like, if you're purposefully segregating queer people, you need to be stopped. It's not cute. It's not the look. Like, we got to support each other and uplift each other.
Absolutely.
Lateral violence just doesn't make any sense. We have bigger fish to fry. Can you please support the siblings in your community? Like, maybe you don't relate to their lived experience, but can you respect it and like move on? We have bigger fish to fry. People are literally, trans women of color are literally dying every day, and you want to police my trans body as a trans person. Tell me, make it make sense.
It's absolutely like the attention needs to be spent in other places, because the binary trans experience is a different experience. And like I said before, no trans person's experience is the same. I would never speak over a binary trans man or a binary trans woman and say, well, my experience is more than yours, or it's harder than yours, or blah, blah, blah. Everyone has their own journey. And we know systematically there is so much intersectional oppression that is formed from, you know, people of color being trans and Indigenous people being trans and people with disabilities being trans. There's so many intersections that make it harder for so many people to express their identity. So we need to be fighting that systemic, you know, transphobia, not each other. So thank you for raising that, Mickey. Well, they're my 3 questions. I think we'll take a few questions from the audience if any of them are topical, unless there's anything else that anyone wants to bring up that you've been thinking about.
One thing. For example, I used to meet a lot of people who is like, I don't like labels, but sometimes labels are very needed. Now there is more people who is non-binary. It doesn't mean that we appear like from a portal, magic portal, like, whoa. No, it was just like, now we identify as something, you know, now we found these words. They say like, oh my God, like I see myself in this. And that's it.
Absolutely. Like, labels aren't necessary. You don't have to live your life with a label. You don't have to come out. You don't have to have that experience. I mean, Mickey, you and I were talking about this the other day on the other live we did. Coming out is not an essential prerequisite for being queer. You know, you can be queer in your own way your whole life. But labels are also a very important tool for solidarity and for our community to come together and to represent and support other trans and non-binary people into finding their identities.
It's funny because when I was working, one of my last posts at ABC Queer was during Pride Month and just talking about my personal experience of what I'm proud about, my identity. And Instagram, because it's trying to compete with TikTok, it kind of spreads your content far and wide to like audiences that would never relate. Anyway, people were commenting like, why do you have to be so like, you know, like, I don't know, why do you have to like spread the agenda or whatever? But it's like, with what Inti was saying about labels, it's like, babe, you guys literally talk about being like, you know, I'm just the man that, you know, uses a hammer every day or whatever, like cis het men do. I don't know. But like that is constantly being spoken about. So when we speak about being non-binary and when we speak about our experiences and take the time to share that, it's not about us trying to project an agenda, whatever it is. It's just literally trying to create representation and show other people like us, probably like within us being like, God, I wish that someone did this when I was like a little human, so I could feel valid and safe and like not like lost in my mind about things. You know, we're just trying to facilitate that safety and that validation for other people that they're not like wrong. They're not like inherently wrong just because they feel different to what media and representation and society is currently focused on. Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember the original thing that we were talking about, but I hope that like made sense.
Yeah, no, I totally understand, okay. And it's an important thing to like to bring up in especially in this context, where most of the people watching this are non-binary, trans, or at least have experience within the queer community. It's an important thing to discuss. We have a great question here from the audience for Ilona and Inti, which is, what are your experiences as two Indigenous non-binary people from the Americas, and how do your communities view people who are also non-binary? Either of you want to chuck in any thoughts that you have there?
Come on, Ilona.
Oh, I can go first. You know, I think for me, as far as like Turtle Island and like Western kind of Indigenous background, being Two-Spirit is generally pretty accepted in our communities, but there's a lot of communities that don't acknowledge it and won't accept it. And Two-Spirit as a term, to kind of discuss the third or alt gender in Indigenous communities was only developed in like the 90s as kind of like a blanket term to generalize that alt spirituality in Indigenous cultures in Western indigeneity. So it doesn't apply to every res or every tribe or every Indigenous person amongst Turtle Island, but you know, it's for me, it's knowing that there's still education that needs to happen in our own communities to remind these people that have fallen into the colonial mindset that actually our Indigenous people did not believe in these gender roles way back when. You know, I have friends on certain reserves from certain tribes who are absolutely shunned and out communities, and they don't get to have that connection to the community that I have. And it's fucking heartbreaking. And those are the moments where we have to step in and be like, hey, actually, before colonialism, our people didn't believe in that ideology. And, you know, in America with Indigenous cultures, we have a thing called blood quantum that kind of like specifies how Indigenous you are. And it's really like problematic because it's like a colonial system to group us and place us. And I personally like don't like to talk about that, because if you're Indigenous, you're Indigenous. It doesn't matter what percentage you are. If you grew up with your background, even if you didn't grow up with your background, you want to learn about your background, that's your fucking right as an Indigenous person, you know? And for anyone to tell you, oh, you're not Indigenous enough to embrace your heritage, that's a colonial mindset that they've fallen into and that needs unlearning, you know? And it's important that we're having conversations like this to talk about these things and be like, no, like being two-spirit, being non-binary, being queer, being third gender, being all gender, it's always been a part of our background. And if you've fallen into that colonial mindset trying to hide from your background, and you're gonna bully and harass people in your own goddamn community to be the way you think they should be, that's some unlearning that needs to happen.
Absolutely.
From my perspective, I mean, from my background, sorry, in the Incas history, Viracocha, which is the goddess of the universe, it's a two genders, like they flow between the two genders, and the people who is connect with that goddess are the chamanes, which is like the spiritual guidance. And yeah, in our culture, it was always existed that, and also the most spiritual persons, the people we care the most, we look forward for the advice, etc., are trans people. So, but we are forgetting that because of colonialism.
Yeah, and I think that you both raise such interesting points where it comes to, like, Mickey and I are both, you know, people living on stolen land here in Australia, and I'm always really like interested talking to Indigenous people here from Australia. Our Indigenous people don't necessarily have a third gender concept in a lot of their mythologies and a lot of their stories. It's not necessarily something that's like deeply built into their culture. And so I think not all people shouldn't assume that all Indigenous cultures are the same and that all First Nations people are the same when it comes to ideas of gender as well.
I mean, Indigenous Australians do have girls, brother boys, which can go into kind of non-binary territory, from what I've understood from some of my friends, and also trans have. Love that resource. But yeah,
I think it's just important to talk to people and to understand their viewpoint and to assume that colonialism has erased the stories of most people, and a lot of the stories that have been told are you know, revisionist history that have been told by colonizers. So thank you so much, Ilona and Inti, for sharing your viewpoint on this. Like, I really appreciate both of you speaking your truth. It's so fantastic. Well, most of the questions are basically just stuff that we've already talked about, so I think I'm going to skip most of the questions, but I wanted to give all of you an opportunity to plug something that you're doing, or, you know, if you've got shows coming up or merch or a project or your socials. I just want you to plug whatever, starting with you, Ilona. What have you got to plug?
I just want to say, make sure you guys are always constantly supporting the Indigenous, trans, and non-binary people in your communities. We are so often looked over. We're so often passed over, you know, and it's so important that we're given these platforms like this to have these discussions and have our voices heard. So in your local scenes, go out of your way to find a trans, non-binary, or Indigenous person to support. It's not that hard. That's what I want to plug. Support us.
Support with money.
Yeah.
With money.
Open your wallet.
that's right.
Don't just share their posts. Pay them. Open your purse. Open your purse. Inti, what do you have to plug? Do you have any merch? Do you have anything you want to plug?
Not yet. But very soon I'm preparing it. And also, yeah, the same as Ilona, like support, but support with conscious, you know, like we are in a capitalism, you have to support with money, because we pay rent, we want to pay food.
Fucked up that we have to pay rent on our own goddamn fucking land. Blows my mind.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was actually like, if you are rejecting ideas under colonialism, capitalism, patriarchy, all of the things that actually hold us back from being who we are and just being, then support the traditional owners of your land. I would really suggest, especially Black Rainbow is a great LGBTQ Indigenous organization that you can donate to. And also, if we're talking land back and talking about putting land management back into, the traditional owners' lands, then I would consider following Five Sticks Network, Alliance Network, and also donating to them. Support the traditional owners of this land, because colonialism has affected us all, and it's oppressed us all in a lot of different ways. That's why we are where we are and why we're doing this work all together to unlearn things because of colonialism. So support the Indigenous people on the land that you've settled on, and also beyond internationally.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's so many great, for all of my Australian followers, I have a highlight on my Instagram page, which is full of Indigenous charities to donate to, and you can volunteer your time to, for a lot of them, to become, a volunteer and assist with admin or sorting out donations. That, using your own, if you don't have financial resources, investing your time into community is also a valid way of doing this. But for people with money, pay the rent, pay money, and support your local artists. All three of these people are beautiful, amazing artists. I'm so grateful for their voices, and happy International Non-Binary People's Day, everyone. We are surviving, but we're also thriving. We're doing our best, and we're doing it our way. So proud of all of you and the voices that you put out into the world. And thank you so much for watching, everyone. I'm going to save this to my IGTV so people can watch it afterwards. But thank you all, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Love you all.
Thank you, angels. Bye, everyone.